Well, I hope everybody had a great weekend. I can say that I did not have any glitches in mine. Everything seemed to go off well and according to plan. And I have to tell you, that doesn't happen very, very often. A lot to talk about today. It has been a fascinating weekend, and coming into today, we have a lot to talk about, really on the state level, as well as on the world stage, I guess, as well. A lot of things going on that will impact you probably on the local level, perhaps more so than anything else we'll talk about nationally today. And we'll get to that a bit later because we'll be joined at one point in the show by Randy Staples from Idaho Weekly Briefing. He joins us on Monday mornings and shares some thoughts with us on a lot of issues that impact us locally and across the state, sometimes regionally as well, because of the intertwined economies we have in the Northwest with various neighboring states. Scott Walker made his announcement today. It is official. He is, I think, the 16th. The number, all right, we'll just say he's the 700th Republican to say he'd like to be president of the United States. We'll have a detail on that in a little while. I actually have some sound from Governor Walker's announcement this morning. But I wanted to begin today with some comments. In fact, just mentioning Randy Staples, and I referenced the intertwined nature of Idaho with some of its neighboring states, because you do a lot of driving back and forth, and a lot of people do a lot of shopping back and forth, and there's a lot of just simple business transactions. If you're shipping something out of Idaho and you want to get it to the West Coast, you've got to get it through a couple of neighboring states. There is a temptation, I think, often in media to criticize, especially Republicans. Let's be honest, if you're looking at people who work in most news media, they are overwhelmingly liberal. I don't like the word progressive. I think that implies progress, and that's a subjective judgment. I don't like to use that word, and when I hear it, I wish people would stop using it, because the idea is to get you to think that these people actually are, that they're for progress. Well, I think that's questionable still at this point. But they will tell you that, and frequently, if you look at the op-ed pages in the newspapers across the state of Idaho, there's constant criticism of Republicans. If only they could be more like Democrats, then the whole world would be brighter. And this goes on and on and on. Well, Oregon, directly to our west, is controlled by the liberals in the Democrat Party, not just Democrats. Jim Webb was on television yesterday on one of the chat shows, a former senator from Virginia, and Jim Webb was saying that the Democrat Party has moved too far to the left. Now, remember, he worked in the Reagan administration, so he's a very old-fashioned style Democrat. He's not one of these flaming liberals. But I think that in Oregon, we pretty much know there's a TV series that actually mocks all of this. It's called Portlandia, about just how politically correct and how far left the control of that state has gone. Bill Colley with you, coming up on 10 minutes after 8 o'clock, 63 at our studios. So I have this story. I found this at GOPUSA.com over the weekend. Sex change surgery for your kids, compliments of the taxpayer. Now, if you have a child, you realize that child cannot purchase alcohol and is not supposed to be imbibing until the age of 21, because we don't believe that young people have that responsibility. There may be some who are very responsible at 12, and there are some who are terribly irresponsible at 40. But we tend to have an arbitrary date of 21 and say that's when people can actually have a glass of wine or a cold beer or a shot of whiskey. And we say that because we're worried that they're not going to be terribly responsible. And if you visit any college campus anywhere in the region, you probably would have that stereotype certainly backed up by some of the behavior of some of the people you would see there. It hasn't changed much. I'll point that part out. I went to college 30 years ago, and things really haven't changed a whole lot. There was a lot of irresponsibility on campus at the time, and it just seems built into the culture. So what about a 15-year-old? Well, listen to this. The writer says, what are we supposed to think about Oregon's law, which allows children as young as 15 to get a sex change without parental notification or consent? I mean, come on. And this is not reversible, right? And once this is done, you know, when you're suddenly 18 and you say to yourself, I may have made a mistake. I'll just go down to the plumber and have him just rearrange things. It doesn't work that way. As reported by Fox News, under a first-in-the-nation policy quietly enacted in January that many parents are now only finding out about, 15-year-olds are now allowed to get a sex change operation. Many residents are stunned to learn they can do it without parental notification. and the state will even pay for it through its Medicaid program, the Oregon Health Plan. At 15, I remember being 15. I turned 15, I think, the year that I was just going into my sophomore year in high school, in October of that year. It is the most confusing time. Every time you have a zit pop out, you're worried that everyone is looking at you going, "Ah!" And it may not be happening that way, but you tend to perceive the world that way. How does anyone at the age of 15 know? I mean, seriously, how do you actually know? If we can't have a drink until we're 21 because we don't have the brains yet or the responsibility yet, how can you go have a doctor take out some sharp knives and rearrange your plumbing? It's unbelievable that anybody in their right mind, legislators, in fact, would actually approve of this, which they did. It was apparently signed into law by the previous governor of Oregon, who you may remember left office in disgrace, and then was replaced by his lieutenant. She's bisexual, so she's not even sure yet what she is. She's married, but she says she's bisexual, and she's not quite sure that she's made up her mind which way the gate swings in her case. And she's got to be 35, 40 years old. So why is this happening? And my bigger question is this. You have all of these newspaper editors clamoring for more Democratic control in places like Boise. Can you imagine, just stand back for a moment, what we would have in Idaho if we ended up with their dream of how government should operate? There are some things Oregon does. And certainly there are people in the state legislature in Boise who say, we should do that too. This is one of those areas that's not happening. Why isn't it happening? Because there are a great many Republicans and conservatives, yes, despised by the newspaper elites, but they will not allow this to happen. And you as a parent will have some control. So if your child comes home, your son comes home at 15 and says, I think my real name is Jasmine, and I'm going to go down to the hospital, and they're going to get out the scalpel, and they're going to rearrange me, you can say no. It's 8:14. Bill Colley with you, 63 still. If you'd like to reach our program today, you can give us a call at 736-0300. I'm also available by email at bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. And then you hear these people say, well, we have to be cognizant of these children's feelings and their confusion and help them. Look, I'm 53. I'll be 53 actually technically in October. But I entered my 53rd year right after my 52nd birthday. And there are days when I'm confused about what I want for dinner. It doesn't go away, my friends, and it's just part of the human condition. And so if someone is a little confused at 15, well, welcome to the club. I also have this. This comes out of our neighbors to the west as well, the People's Republic of Oregon. This from theregisterguard.com. Prosecutor outlines sex abuse case against gay rights activist Terry Bean. Says second accuser contacted police. That's the headline. Do you know who this Terry Bean guy is? He has been involved at the highest levels of Democrat Party politics, not just in Oregon, but nationally for a few decades. Days after attorneys, the writer says, for well-known gay rights activist and political fundraiser Terry Bean announced that he and a 15-year-old boy had reached an agreement that could result in the dismissal of sexual abuse charges. In other words, somebody was bought off. A prosecutor has filed court documents alleging that Bean had, there's another story here. Many, many years ago, that a teenager in Eugene, Oregon had relationships or a relation with this man 3 decades ago. Prosecutor Scott Healy argues in the court filing that evidence of sexual misconduct that allegedly occurred in 1979 should be admissible at Bean's upcoming trial, where a jury is to decide whether the 66-year-old Portland resident is guilty of having sex with a teenager who he and another man met in Eugene in September 2013. And it was a threesome, according to this. And the teenager was about 15 years old at the time, obviously not sure what he was. He's now a doctor, so has gone on and actually achieved something in life and perhaps figured it out a long time ago. But most doctors don't go around making just allegations willy-nilly against other people. So we have that's going on there. These are the type of people who actually help make that decision on surgery for 15-year-olds. People who may have a history of molesting underage children. And whether or not you're cooperative at the age of 15, when I was a kid growing up, it was called a jailbait. That is, it would be statutory rape, even if somebody under a certain age. Some states at the age differs, of course. In my home state, it was 17. Some states it's 18. Some states it may be as low as 16. But if you're having relations with someone below that age group, then it doesn't matter whether or not they said, sure, I'll go along with it. Because once again, the law says that they are not adult enough. They're not mature enough to make these decisions. So here you go. You can't have a beer until you're 21. You can't technically consent to sexual relations until, in many states, until you're 17 or 18 years old. And yet in Oregon, they want to let someone come in and take a scalpel to your private parts at 15. And again, it won't grow back. Let me just put it that way. And one other thing I've got to mention as long as we're on this topic. This came from the website of Allen West, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. 24 Democrats sponsor House bill to eliminate words husband and wife from federal law. I give up, the writer says. Those of you who elected these people, you know who they are. If you won't do the honorable thing now, so the rest of us can finally get some peace, hey, I've got nothing left if we've descended all the way to this. And then there's, they borrowed this from another website, but it reads more than 24 Democrats have proposed legislation that would eliminate the words husband and wife from federal law. Those, quote, gendered terms, unquote, would be replaced by, quote, gender neutral, unquote, words like spouse or married couple, according to the bill from Representative Lois Capps of California. Can you guess what political party she's a member of? Well, it's almost Oregon. I mean, it's the same side of the coast, and so you have a lot of migration going on between these people from one side to the next. Telephone number 736-0300. We have about a minute before we reach our first break. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com, and you're on the air.
Good morning, Bill. Hey, just heard that they are, I'd say they, homosexuals are suing, I believe it's Thomas Nelson, the publisher of one of the Bibles, to take anything that has to do with them out of it.
I saw that last week.
Okay.
I thank you for the call.
Bye.
And, but I'm glad you're bringing it up again. People should be reminded of these things because we do tend to forget the world is a busy place. Speaking of that, Schubat.com. This is out of Germany. Homosexuals throw human excrement at Christians and wipe their anuses with pages of the Bible. True story. When up to 1,000 conservative Christian parents in Germany were protesting against a new pro-homosexual sexual diversity curriculum in their schools, homosexuals charged at them and threw human excrement. They also ripped pages of the Bible, wiped their anuses with the pages, crumpled them up, and then threw those at the Christians. And then the writer says, what's so different from these sodomites than the Muslims who defecate in churches? And the writer says the answer is nothing. We've got plenty more coming up. Believe me, I hate to say it, it doesn't necessarily get any better. Well, hey, it's still nice outside, so maybe go for a long walk. Bill Colley with you at 64.